Hi, welcome to Deep Six, the Deep State. By the way, Deep Six, the Deep State has now been declared a show by Facebook. And Facebook is releasing a list, its first list of shows that are officially regarded as such by Facebook, and I'm right there on it. And to my knowledge, Newt Gingrich and I are the only two political people who are on it. And they're going to have a watch button soon as an app and also as a thing on the bottom of your Facebook page where you can click it and you'll get all the films that are up there and you can choose what you want. So hopefully more people will choose me and we can really get this show going. As I've told you, it's my view that this is the antidote to the establishment liberal media. Don't try to beg for time on their TV station, and don't go crazy trying to fight for impartial newscasters. Set up your own. And that's just what I'm doing here, and I think with some success. There was a really interesting smoking gun that emerged in the last few days about the deep state. Two of them, actually. The concept of the deep state, that it is embedded officials who are bureaucrats who have long been in their jobs and think they run the world. They see the elected leaders as figureheads or rubber stamps, and they feel the real power rests with them. And I would personally go on and say that there are two branches of it. The economic branch, which in the U.S. is the Treasury Department, the Federal Reserve Board, and the IMF. And the other is the national security part of it, which is the intelligence agencies, the State Department, the Defense Department, and the White House. And those people imagine that they are there permanently. So there was an interview on CNN with the guy who used to be the number 2 official at the FBI. Specifically, he was deputy director under Robert Mueller. So this is as close as you can get to a candid statement of Mueller's thinking. He said that Trump's defense of Vladimir Putin has compelled federal employees at Langley, the CIA, Foggy Bottom, State Department, CIA, and State to try to take Trump down. Let me give you one bottom line as a former government official. Government is going to kill this guy, he said. He defends Vladimir Putin. There are State Department and CIA officers coming home, and by that he meant dead. And at Langley and Foggy Bottom, CIA and State, they're saying, this is how you defend us? People talk about the deep state. When you disrespect government officials who've done 20 or 30 years, they're going to say, really? Vladimir Putin sends officers home and you support him before you support us? What did you think of the Department of Justice say on Paul Manafort? You can say what you want. A judge told us we had cause to search his home early in the morning because we didn't trust the guy who was your campaign manager. The government is going to kill this guy because he doesn't support them. That was as frank and bold a statement by a deep state official as you can get, and a very highly placed one, number 2 at the FBI. There's a sense of entitlement about his attitude toward government. It's our government, and your job is to play along, and if you don't, we're not going to help you, and we're going to hurt you, and we could actually oust you from power. Remember that in 1976, and we talk about this in Rogue Spooks, Jimmy Carter took office campaigning against the FBI and the CIA. And when he became president, he said, I'll fix them. I'll appoint Ted Sorensen, a liberal who was John Kennedy's speechwriter, to be in charge of the CIA. And then guess what happened? He never got confirmed. He was divorced twice, and it was a messy divorce, and in college he was a conscientious objector, and blah, 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 and ultimately he couldn't get confirmed. They will not permit an outsider to compromise their power or effectively regulate them, which Donald Trump is doing. And as such, he's earning the animus of the deep state. That's why the first guy they went after was Michael Flynn. who explained this in Rogue Spooks. By the way, please, please, please get your copy. It's on sale tomorrow. You can order it today and you'll get it tomorrow. And he was the bête noire of the intelligence community. He had gone to the DIA, the Defense Intelligence Agency, and he said, you guys should get out in the field. You shouldn't be sitting here preparing reports. And then he went to the U.S. Afghanistan operation, and he said, your intelligence is too old. You're not focusing on the swing provinces, which could go for us or against us. And everywhere he went, he rattled cages and he upended apple carts. And people in the intelligence community said he was a bull loose in the china shop. And when he got named National Security Advisor by President Trump, the national intelligence types absolutely hit the ceiling. Chuck Schumer, the Democratic leader, said it best. He said Trump is unwise for taking on the intelligence community because these guys fight back. And what he meant was exactly what's happening to Trump now would befall anybody that ran afoul of them. And you're seeing this entire community congealing against the elected leadership of the country. Now, Ned Price, who served on the National Security Council under Obama, said this, meaning Mudd's statement, is beyond the pale. This is an Obama appointee, and will have a chilling effect going forward on the ability of the commander-in-chief to have candid discussions with his people. Here, he's specifically referring to the release of the transcripts of Trump's conversations with the presidents of Venezuela and Mexico, of Australia and Mexico. But there is a clear understanding here that in flouting these guys, Trump is taking on the world, and the world is paying him back. And when you think about it, what this means is that if we lose this fight, if Trump is ousted from office, if this effort to railroad him and to get him on the totally phony charge of collusion with Russia, if he's forced out of office over this, or on some obstruction of justice charge that is concocted that flows from that, no president of the United States will be able to govern independently. They're going to be looking over their shoulder all the time, like in some Latin American country, at what's the military doing, what's the intelligence establishment doing, what's the media establishment doing. It will mean that we'll have a conditional democracy in this country. And when you elect somebody who flouts the consensus of that conditional democracy, like Trump, they get rid of him. They throw him out. It doesn't matter what the people said. They railroad him, and they force him out of office. And this process of railroading him, of plotting against him, of everybody doing it, is what we describe in Rogue Spooks. The minute Obama understood that Trump was going to win the Republican nomination, he set this in motion. And when he found out to his shock that Trump won the election, it went into high gear. And the first step was when McCain brought to Comey this dossier that was totally phony, completely fictitious. We explain in the book how it is. The guy who was the principal actor in it, who negotiated this collusion with Putin, never went to Czechoslovakia where the meetings were alleged to have taken place. His passport showed he'd never been there. And the guy who supposedly hacked the DNC website on his instructions was nowhere near that. He was in a jail, a penal colony in Russia for pedophilia, 600 miles east of Moscow. He didn't have access to a telephone, much less a computer. And when all this was exposed, Comey, anyway, knowing all of this, put that memo on Barack Obama's desk and said, Mr. President, this has come in. It's my duty to show it to you. Oh, he put boilerplate in there. We can't verify everything in it. But he thought enough of it to pass it along. Comey knew that that document was phony because Comey had gotten it and had offered $50,000 to Christopher Steele, the British spy, the former British spy, to verify it, to substantiate it. Now that's $50,000 in the middle of an election to be spent on getting negative research on one of the candidates and tax money. That's a big no-no. But in any case, Steele couldn't verify it, and Comey knew that it was a pack of lies. But he still gave it up to Obama and sent it to Congress, knowing that from there it would obviously leak. And it did leak 10 days before Trump's inauguration, all over the place. Well, the media, which had earlier refused to publish this nonsense, was still skeptical of it, still took it with a grain of salt. So what happened then was that this carefully orchestrated, prepared, and seeded leaking campaign of sabotage and disinformation swung into high gear. Obama and his minions, Brennan, the former CIA chief, and Holder, the former Attorney General, and Comey, the head of the FBI, had seeded their agencies with left-wing political loyalists, activists, lawyers, for example, who defended the inmates at Guantanamo, not prosecuted them, defended them, people who were very, very much on the left, totally left. And they put them in those positions. And when it became clear that Trump was going to win, they switched them to civil service jobs so they couldn't be ousted, so Trump couldn't get rid of them. And then, I'm sorry, I'll be on this for a little bit.
No, that's okay. You're number 4. I just want to let you know in the world.
Oh, good. Okay, well, we'll move it up by this. Then he moved them over to civil service jobs, and they began leaking against Trump. And then the sycophantic liberal media picked up, and they gave huge play to everything. It was a conspiracy of the two of them. We'll give you leaks, you'll run it like crazy. Never mind that the leaks are inaccurate, never mind that they're lies. The biggest leak, which set the tone for all the others, came out on February 14th of this year, Valentine's Day. And it was a statement, a story, that said that the FBI had overheard Trump staffers talking to Russian intelligence officers, plotting this collusion. Totally untrue. Not a grain of truth in it. Comey picked up the phone and called Priebus, chief of staff, and said, hey, I'm sorry, this isn't true, and I so regret that it's out there. And Priebus said, regret it's out there? It's the front page of the New York Times. They're battering down my door. Issue a public statement. And Comey said, no, I'm not going to do that. I don't want to get mixed up in denying every leak that might come from one place or another. It's beneath the Bureau's mission. And Comey's deputy, McCabe, said that the leak was BS. He used the words. And that leak and dozens, hundreds of others came out, all designed to show Trump as an incompetent, an imbecile, an idiot, somebody who's dangerous, and it became a constant campaign to destabilize Donald Trump. At the very start of our book, Road Spooks, I don't know if you watch Homeland, the TV show, but there's a scene in it where Saul Berenson, who plays the head of the CIA, says to the president-elect, who is like Trump at that point, being attacked because of something in her past where she claimed her son was a hero and he might not have been in the war. But Berenson said, you're missing it right now. It's happening in front of your faces. We have a disinformation campaign designed to discredit the president-elect. And as of today, they have boots on the ground, like the demonstrators I had to wade through to get here. Does that seem familiar to any of you? It does to me. That's what we did to Nicaragua, Chile, Congo, and a dozen other places, all the way back to the 50s in Iran. And it does not end well for the elected regime. You're fighting for your lives here. Do you get that? You can't remain silent. And that's exactly what I think is going on. So there's this disinformation campaign. Trump can't get through a peep about his accomplishments in office. Everything is about Russia, 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 all the time. Obstruction of justice, Manafort, totally fictitious scandal. He's created 1 million jobs, okay? The stock market is at the all-time record high. There are 6.3 million open available jobs in the United States. Our energy production has soared. We're we're about to be number one in the world in energy production. Illegal immigration is cut by 70%, for God's sakes. What do you want the guy to do? And yet everybody says he's doing nothing because the media won't let the truth out. And now they're going to impeach him because they're going to impeach him claiming that, I'm sorry, what's that?
Oh, no, see you later. I'm sorry.
They're going to impeach him saying that, oh, well, maybe you didn't collude with the Russians, but it's obstruction of justice. And where does obstruction of justice come from? The President of the United States is in charge of the Justice Department and in charge of the FBI. And fighting crime, protecting national security, fighting domestic terrorism, fighting drugs is a very important part of his job. And the guy that's supposed to do that is the head of the FBI. So he calls Comey in, and he says, why aren't you doing these things? Where's the action on this stuff? This is not satisfactory. And Comey said, well, we have a lot of agents dedicated to following up the investigation of Russia. And Trump says, Russia? I didn't do any of this garbage they said that I did. There is no collusion there. Get your people over and have them do something that the country needs, for God's sakes. I've had it up to here with this. Comey then writes this all in a little memo, leaks it to the media, and then cries, obstruction of justice. He told me to kill the investigation, which is not what he said. And they leak it to the media, and then everybody demands Trump appoint a special prosecutor. Trump fires Comey, and then eventually has to appoint one. And they make sure that it's a doozy of a prosecutor because they removed Jeff Sessions from supervising it because they tripped him up, asking him if as a campaign operative he met with the Russians, whereas in fact he didn't. He met with them as a member of the Armed Services Committee. And on that, Sessions, who needed some spying, instead backs down and recuses himself. And now they're going to go through every last thing that Donald Trump did ever since he was a kid. And they're going to squeeze people. They're going to come up with everything they can find of crimes and misdemeanors. And they're going to work hard on trying to stampede the Trump people into additional obstruction of justice to get rid of him. That, my friends, is a coup d'etat. It's not an investigation. It's a coup. There might as well be tanks rolling up Pennsylvania Avenue and guys with beards seizing control of the radio station. What do you need before you realize it's a coup? And that's what this book is about, and that's why it is so crucially important that you read it and you get it. And it gives us the antidote. The antidote, which I hope everybody reads, and I hope Trump reads, is name a special prosecutor to go after the prosecutor, to go after Robert Mueller and deal with these leaks. For example, there's a story in the paper today, which can only have come from a leak from the special prosecutor's office. It says, Mueller is said to seek interview with West Wing in the Russia case, that Mueller is going to interview Priebus. And because Priebus's name appears on the calendar of Paul Manafort on the same day that Manafort had that meeting in Trump Tower. Well, I don't mind that Priebus does that, but he leaks it to the media. That's illegal. You're not allowed to leak who you're seeing. And you know all the details. We've all heard it of the break-in at Manafort's house by the special prosecutor's thugs and knocked down the door, and he came out in his pajamas and his bathrobe at 5 in the morning and all of that. All that is secret. Manafort didn't issue a press release on that. That was leaked. And what you need to do now is have a special prosecutor who investigates these tactics, deals with Hillary and the Clinton Foundation, deals with Loretta Lynch telling Comey to downplay the investigation, and fight fire with fire. None of this Mr. Nice Guy nonsense that seems to be going on at the White House. I feel very, very strongly about that. We had a more interesting analysis of the deep state today from a guy named Rich Higgins, who served as Director of Strategic Planning in the NSC's planning office, a holdover from the Obama days. And he was fired on July 21st for writing a memo that said that leftists, globalists, Islamists, and deep state actors are engaged in political warfare against Donald Trump. Throughout the campaign, candidate Trump tapped into a deep vein of concern among many citizens that America is at risk and slipping away. globalists and Islamists recognize that for their visions to succeed, America, both as an ideal and as a national and political entity, must be destroyed, weaponizing political correctness to undermine the United States fight against extremists. And he was fired because he wrote that memo. Whereas he should have been promoted and lionized. And it's not stopped there. McMaster has been purging pro-Trump people. You remember the first step in this coup was getting rid of Michael Flynn. That happened right out of the gate. And what was the excuse? That he had not revealed to the vice president that he had spoken to the Russian ambassador about sanctions, when 3 weeks later, as national security advisor, it would have been his job to do that, and they framed him on that. And we have a chapter in here on Flynn, and you have to realize that was the beginning of the deep state taking Donald Trump apart and forcing him to have a government that isn't his own. And now McMaster, he put in charge, fires Higgins for writing that memo. And there's Derek Harvey, a retired Army colonel, who recently complained to McMaster about the large number of his officials who were kept on the NSC from the Obama administration. He was told by McMaster that he has a leadership problem, according to people close to the matter. And then there's a guy named Cone Watnick, senior director for intel programs at the NSC, who ran afoul of McMaster because of his conservative views. A White House official said McMaster appears to be trying to clean out anyone from the NSC staff who is outspokenly pro-Trump and have been slow-rolling the president directions that he disagrees with. Well, this is Trump's appointee? This is the guy Trump named to that position? Trump is just ensnared like little Puchin, Gulliver, in a million ropes, a million ties that tie him down and he can't act. And this book is a call to break free of that. Well, I've talked too long. Let me take questions and comments.
Well, Dick, John Holland and Sherry Pribble want to know what we can do to stop the deep state.
You can fight for a special prosecutor. Sign the petition that I've talked about on my website.
I'll post it on here too.
Yeah, and contact your congressmen, your senators, Jeff Sessions, the president. Raise hell. Get your friends to do it. Set up Donald Trump clubs where you all work together in your neighborhood to promote the idea that a president cannot be removed from office by this kind of railroading. Call it for what it is. Figuratively, come out in the streets. This is the United States of America we've got to protect.
And Dick, Brandon Altos, he's a loyal follower, wanted to know if you think that Bill Clinton is secretly happy that Hillary lost the election, which will make him the only President Clinton. What are your thoughts on that?
Is Bill Clinton happy Hillary lost? No, because he wanted Hillary to win because he saw it as vindication as a result of impeachment. That, the people voted for Hillary and therefore Bill really was not guilty and was okay for them.
We don't have any more questions,
Okay.
but maybe we could mention the contest question now so then people can write in. You want to do
You
that?
mean the one for tomorrow?
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do we do the answer?
No answer.
Okay,
This is the contest question is, where did it go? You know it, you got it.
Oh, the one,
Yeah,
the one
we're
you have, yes.
Yes, we're gonna
Contest question is, who is the only man ever elected President of the United States who had no prior experience in public office and no military commission?
Now, folks, when you post your answer, preface it with, in capital letters, contest, and no additions, please. They'll be disqualified. Thanks.
And the winner gets a copy of my book, signed, pretty. Now, Trump has a move up his sleeve that is really interesting, and I wanted to play it out to you. We need an extra vote in the Senate, desperately, because McCain is a traitor, and Susan Collins was never on board to begin with, and Lisa Murkowski will follow no leader at all unless somebody helps her financially, I believe. I can't prove that, so it's not libel, but it's her reputation. Anyway, and we need an extra vote. So there's a plot here that I think is really cool. Kelly, was the Homeland Chief Director, and he has now been moved to become the Chief of Staff. So the idea is that you go to Rick Perry, former governor of Texas, and ask him to leave the Energy Department and instead take over Homeland Security, a big promotion for him. That'll vacate the job of Secretary of Energy. And the concept would then be to give it to U.S. Senator Joe Manchin, who is the senator from West Virginia. Now, Manchin will probably want that job, first of all, because he's a strong advocate of energy. He's from West Virginia, and he's very closely connected to the coal industry. And he could be in a position to be tremendously important for the revival of coal production. It's an opportunity he would just relish. And if he left the Senate, there would be a vacancy, and the governor would appoint the successor. Now, until last week, the governor was a Democrat, but last week he shifted and became a Republican. And I suspect behind that might have been, so that was the same week that they moved Kelly, that might have been implementing this program, where he would appoint a Republican senator in Manchin's place, which would give us 53 votes, not 52, and give us a little bit of breathing room. We could, for example, have repealed Obamacare with that additional Republican vote. So just keep that in your mind. I think that may well happen. Now, this video is sponsored by the Patriot Gold Group, and if you've noticed, the price of gold has gone up every time Kim Jong-un opens his mouth. Every time there's a threat of war or a threat of global instability, gold immediately increases. It's the historical safe haven of investors. And when times get rough, you want to be in gold because the currency is subject to confidence. It can go up and down. It can be inflated beyond belief. And as a result, the price of gold last month rose 2.5% in 1 month. Think of what that could be over the course of a year for your investment portfolio. And it looks like gold is going to go up because it doesn't look like Korea is calming down. And God forbid if Korea keeps its threat and bombs Guam with nuclear weapons, and we actually have the possibility of a nuclear exchange. Oh my goodness. Everything is going to go to hell in the economy, and, it might be a good idea to protect yourself. So contact the Patriot Gold Group, patriotgoldgroup.com, or call 800-647-5675. I'm sorry, 800-476-5675. 476-5675. Shall I go on?
Keep going. Need
Now,
those questions.
I want to talk a little bit about the riots in Charlottesville. First, I do believe that Trump should have been more explicit at the beginning in condemning the Nazis and the white supremacists behind it. Trump has made the excellent point that when Obama condemns acts of terror and does not mention radical Islamist jihadists who commit it, that he's making a mistake, he's empowering those people, and he's not directing our attention where it needs to go. And his initial statement where he said violence on both sides without enumerating that group, I think was a mistake. What he should have said is this is violence by the neo-Nazis, by the skinheads, by the white supremacists, and by the group against fascism, whatever that name is, that's so militant and aggressive, which is part of the street violence against the skinheads. He should have been explicit. But I believe that this violence and this issue was the product of 8 years of racial politics by the president. The president and the government should encourage people to forget about race and just deal with us all as people and not notice the race of the people we're working with any more than we notice the color of their hair and oppose working with redheads or blondes or something. It's insane to be basing these on racial divisions. It's anachronistic, it's ignorant. And when the president does it, and the president does it through affirmative action, through efforts to increase minority participation, efforts to allow what I think really ultimately is fraudulent voting with no photo ID. When he does any of that stuff, he's exacerbating racial divisions in this country. Let me give you a good example. The Equal Opportunity Employment Commission ruled under Obama, I hope Trump reverses this, that if an employer asks a potential employee if he has ever been arrested or convicted, that is an equal opportunity violation, that violates the EOC, because there are a disproportionate number of blacks who would have to answer yes to that question. The procedure he's supposed to follow is to see if the job is available, if the person is qualified, and once he decides affirmative to both of those, then he can pop the question, but he can only use it to disqualify him if the job is related to the offense the guy did. In other words, if he robbed a bank and he wants to be a bank teller, it's relevant. This is all nonsense. A person should be able to hire who he wants and not hire someone with a criminal record. It's his business. He should not have to take that risk. But this whole racial politics corrodes that, and I think that led to these horrible attacks. Now, the other thing is, do we have nothing better to do in this country than reopen the scars of the Civil War 165 years ago? I personally have never particularly liked Robert E. Lee. I think that he was a great general, but I think he prolonged the Civil War by at least a year to a year and a half, prolonging slavery and increasing the number of Union troops who had to die to achieve any kind of justice in America. But he's a historical figure. He's of significant note. Jefferson Davis was chairman of the Confederacy. There are plenty of senators that I don't like who are from the South. They shouldn't have their statues ripped down. And you shouldn't make it a cause célèbre inviting this kind of racial discord. Where was the mayor's brains when this happened?
Dick, Michelle Churko wants to know, why are they tearing down monuments and crosses?
Okay. Renee just said I don't need to repeat questions. They're tearing down monuments because of the symbolism involved. Now, sometimes that makes sense. Like when we conquered Baghdad, they pulled down the statue of Saddam Hussein. Okay, I get that. And you don't want statues of Adolf Hitler all over the place. But I do believe that this kind of symbolic politics can be carried way too far. It's one thing to say that you can't have a Confederate flag inside a state flag. Well, that's okay. As a black person, I would look on a Confederate flag the way I look on a swastika as a Jewish person. I don't see it as a historical artifact. I see it as a badge of hatred and racism. And I think that it made sense to make those changes. But a statue, a historical piece of marble that's sitting there unobtrusively on somebody's lawn? Come on, give me a break. Don't you have anything better to pay attention to?
Yeah. Dick, Susan Olson wants to know, how can we heal a very divided nation?
Well, the way to heal this country is to restore its forward dynamic. And I think Trump is doing that by getting the economy moving, by getting us all to work together to move ahead, business and labor and consumers. And I think you're really seeing that. I think it's the media that's the odd man out. And I think that that's the key to making America great again, to make it a team rather than opposing teams. Now, there was a story yesterday that I had to reread the headline 3 times. There was a study done that counted the number of registered voters in the United States. And it counted the number of adults in the United States. Not citizens, not voters, adults. And it found that there were 3.5 million more people registered to vote than adults who lived in the United States. And the adults included citizens, non-citizens, immigrants, legal immigrants, illegal immigrants, and of course voters. Which means obviously there is a vast potential for fraud. And that's because Obama changed the federal law to limit the ability of states to purge their voter rolls. Under the past, if a person had not voted in 2 or 3 consecutive elections, he was sent a mailing, and if he didn't respond, his name was automatically dropped. Obama ended that. He said that was unfair, that it would disenfranchise people. And now you have to actually wait for the person to affirmatively indicate that they moved or that they don't live there, or for the court to indicate that the person has died. And as a result, you have plenty of names there registered to vote that aren't in a position to vote. They don't live there or they're not alive. And that is one of the things that spawns the need for a photo ID in voting. We're living in a country here where the voter lists are totally unreliable, and elections based on them are unreliable.
Dick, why can't we get rid of or prosecute Soros? Scott Matheny asks.
Well, I don't think that Soros has committed any crimes that I know of. I think that what he's done is to fund a lot of organizations, a lot of radical organizations, but I think everything he's done is within the bounds of free speech. If he did anything wrong, I think we can come after him. But guy's entitled to do what he wants with his money and with his mouth. And Soros does both generously. Now, Venezuela, the horrible, corrupt Maduro regime there, has just issued a contract on Marco Rubio, the senator from Florida, calling for his assassination. A Homeland Security memo outlined a death threat from Venezuela against Marco Rubio, an order, quote, to have Senator Rubio assassinated, according to U.S. intelligence. Former Venezuelan military chief Diasobo Caballo is believed to be behind the order, and Senator Rubio has received enhanced security detail in Washington and Miami in response to the threat. Caballo, a member of the ruling Socialist Party in Venezuela, has engaged in a public war of words with Senator Rubio, who called Caballo the Pablo Escobar of Venezuela for his suggested involvement in drug trafficking. President Trump has sanctioned Caballo, and he's not allowed to come to the U.S. He's not allowed to visit his tender, lovely, wonderful bank account that he maintains in the United States, and he's been effectively frozen from his money. And in retaliation, he's threatening to kill Rubio. Rubio has been the leading senator in fighting for freedom in Venezuela and deserves all kinds of commendation for that. He really has done an extraordinary job. Now, anything else?
Yes. Are you concerned that Sessions offered Hillary a plea deal? Rebecca Hockman wants to know.
No, I'm not concerned. I like it. Because ultimately, the point here is not to put Hillary behind bars and vengeance. The point here is to get her to admit the obvious truth that she...
Sorry, guys. Time for a new tripod.
If we please excuse this technical interruption.
Oh, boy. Okay.
I'd love to see a video replay of my face when that pops up.
Oh, boy. Might do it again. Sorry, guys.
That's good. Is it all right?
It might be slipping. I'm going to hold it.
Okay. The deep state strikes again. What were we talking about? Yes, Hillary. I think that it would be fine for her to admit a crime and not be sentenced for it, in much the same way that Bill Clinton basically admitted lying in the Paula Jones deposition, and he was not sent to jail for it. He was stripped of his law license for 5 years and paid a $1 million fine, and I think something like that would be appropriate for Hillary. But the important thing is that they're reopening the investigation, and that I think is crucial.
Dick, Alice Cruz-Acebo makes a comment. The monuments are part of this country's history. Removing them will not change history.
Yeah, that's completely true, and that's why it's crazy to risk a public outcry over removing some pieces of stone from the town square. That's insane. Don't we have more important things to do? Now, the last story is a really intriguing one. There is a group called, a company, commercial company, called 23andMe, which was founded by the wife of the Google founder, Bryn. And do I have the name of the person here? I'm sorry, I don't have her name, but she is the wife of the founder of Google. And 23andMe is Sergey Brin is his name. 23andMe, you have 23 chromosomes, and it permits a genetic tracking of each individual. You spit into a vial, you send it to them, and they analyze it, and they get back to you with some really neat stuff. Are you ultra sensitive to light? Do you tend to be left-handed? All kinds of details about you and your behavior, and potentially are you vulnerable to certain illnesses. They have to work on making sure that they don't send people letters saying you're going to drop dead, but they're within those limits. They do what they can to give you information about yourself. Okay, so far so good. But apparently they are storing this information and encoding it so that there will increasingly be a genetic profile of each of us on file with commercial and government entities having access to it. Now, I think that goes way too far. Let's say that you are unfortunate enough to be earmarked to have Alzheimer's when you get older, or Parkinson's, and you try to get a job, and the word leaks out in your file that that's true. Nobody will ever look at hiring you. And this could be very, very dangerous. And this sort of gleeful response you get from the tech community about everybody should know everything about everybody all the time can really go too far. And I think this is a good example of that.
Dick, Al Tardif Jr. wants to know, why is the First Amendment so important, but the Second Amendment is being abused? They are both in the same Constitution. That's Al Tardif.
Well, the Second Amendment is being abused because the establishment wants it to be abused. There's a reason that it's the Second Amendment. It's to protect the First Amendment. And historically, the right to bear arms was won as part of the Revolution of 1688, the Glorious Revolution in Britain, which was when Parliament asserted its supremacy over the king, ousted James II, and brought in William and Mary from Holland. And that was important because it limited royal power, basically for the first time. And part of that was certain basic rights people were guaranteed, and the right to bear arms was included in that because it's a defense against tyranny and usurpation, and it remains that. Now, the Supreme Court has just recently recognized the existence of the Second Amendment and cleared up that it isn't just about having a militia, and I think we're going to have more and more decisions bolstering the Second Amendment. I also just want to point out that there is a deep statistical correlation that I've explored and I've worked on. A guy named John R. Locke wrote a book called More Guns, Less Crime. And there's a direct correlation between states that permit guns, and particularly states that permit open carry, and crime rates being decreased. While the population of the United States has gone up by 2 to 3% a year, the number of homicides is half of what it used to be. The number of guns is going up, and the number of homicides is going down. And I think those are connected.
Dick, the Democrats like to say that they and the Republicans have switched sides on racism. What do you have to say on this? Ronald Quivinen asks.
Ronald Quivinen, good question. Have the two parties switched sides on racism? The Democrats having historically been more in opposition, and the Republicans as a result. See, originally, the Republicans were the anti-race party. They were the Abraham Lincoln Party. The Democrats were controlled by the Southern segregationists, who were racist and bigoted. But then John Kennedy and Lyndon Johnson purged the Democratic Party of the racists, and Richard Nixon, with his Southern strategy, worked on embracing the white vote in the South, and they kind of switched sides now. Now the issue comes of reverse discrimination. against white people because of affirmative action. And here the Republicans are urging less reliance on race and the Democrats more. So I think that's true. I've told you before that my view on affirmative action, which I worked hard to persuade President Clinton of, but lost that fight to Stephanopoulos, who advocated affirmative action. I said, keep affirmative action, but base it on income, not on race, so, and not on gender. So it's not based on it's based on objective measurements. Well, thanks very much. Now, why don't you tell them all how to share and expand and all of that?
Okay, guys, you are going to, first of all, when you can share this video right now, click left to the comments and share it to all your friends. You're then going to go
Share
to
it quick before it drops.
go to Dick's fan page, which you're on right now. Look under community, and you'll see a link to invite your friends to like this page. You'll do that. And make sure that you yourselves have liked this page. A lot of people are on here and they haven't even liked it. So like his page, follow it, see first, and...
See, the reason this is important is that when I come on, you and whoever you list will be notified so that they can come on. There's no obligation to do it, but they be notified that it's happening.
Exactly. And also when this video closes out, in the upper right-hand corner, click the little arrow down, and then you can select that you want to be notified for all future live videos. So you won't miss out on a thing.
That's right. Now she'll let go and this thing will
Yeah,
come
my hand is
shooting
tired.
at me. Okay.
Bye.
Thank you.